The film begins with this guy named Gabriel Russell, who used to be in prison. Turns out he was a good prisoner, so they let him out on parole after he behaved well for 3 months. After getting out from the jail, Russell and his buddies had this plan to swipe some cash from a security guard who had just walked out of the bank carrying a bunch of money. Everything was going fine until one of his friends panicked and shot the security guard, which wasn't part of the plan at all. They were worried that the FBI might get involved now, and that's way scarier than dealing with the regular police. Now there were these super professional FBI folks on the case, trying to figure out who did the robbery and killed the security guard at the local bank. Russell's worst fear had come true. Now, the 3 of them had to be super sneaky and make sure there were no tiny bits of evidence left behind. During the investigation, there were these 2 FBI agents, and they had a sheriff with them to help out with the case. The sheriff explained what happened at the crime scene. There were 3 people all masked up and carrying guns. They robbed a security guard who had just left the bank with a bag of money. To make things clearer, the FBI also talked to the driver who was with the security guard. He pretty much said the same thing as the sheriff, with a few small details like the way they talked and who seemed like the leader of the group. After a while, the sheriff said that the thieves had set the car they used on fire. That was a problem because it would be really hard for the FBI to find any DNA, fingerprints, hair, or stuff like that from a burned-up car. On the other hand, there's this guy named Rader, who runs a bar and is also connected to the mafia. Turns out, he's the one who came up with the plan for the robbery Russell was part of. After they split the money from the heist, Rader was offered another job, which was a bigger bank robbery. But here's the twist. Rader found out that Russell's little brother messed up during the previous robbery. So, Rader made a deal with Russell. He wanted Russell to vouch for his brother, promising that any problems caused by his brother would be his responsibility. He said that if Russell ran into any trouble, he couldn't count on Rader for help, even when they're buddies, but the deal is a deal. Turns out, Russell's younger brothers' names were Marcos and Wesley. So, after giving Marcos his share of the loot, Russell scolded him for being careless during the last job and decided to hold back some of the money to teach him a lesson and help him grow more responsible for the future. The next morning, Russell decided to patch things up with his daughter, even though their relationship had been broken for a long time. But his daughter, who really disliked Russell, just kicked him out and wished they'd never meet again. At the same time, it was known that the burned car didn't have any clues like DNA or fingerprints, so the FBI had to work extra hard to crack the case. In the middle of all this, the FBI boss had a visitor from the CIA, who also came to help solve the same case, which figuring out who was behind the robbery and murder that happened a while back. Meanwhile, Russell was unsure what to do with his money, so he hired a notary to turn it into property as a long-term investment for himself and his daughter's future. After that, he went to see his dad, who lived far away. At that time, his dad warned him not to trust Rader and to quit the job before he ended up old like him. The next day, Russell had to take Marcos home because his usual car broke down at the worst time possible. When they got home, Marcos began talking about how his wife wanted to move from Mexico right away. He wants that because the pay at his workshop was really low, so he asked Russell if there was any future work for them because that one job could help them achieve their dream. But then their chat got interrupted when they heard about a recent robbery, and it freaked them out, especially Wesley, who was equally shocked. In that moment, all eyes were on him when they learned that the FBI had stepped in and warned them that they might get into trouble. At that time, Wesley was already anxious, and things got worse when some people started bothering his girlfriend. Unfortunately, this led to an argument that drew the attention of the bar owner, Rader. But then he tried to mediate between the arguing parties, but ended up getting annoyed by their behavior, leading to a shootout. On the other hand, after dropping off Marcos, Russell headed to Rader's place to discuss their robbery plans. To his surprise, he found Wesley there, having a chat with Rader. At that moment, Russell was getting fed up with Wesley's behavior, which was becoming more and more troublesome. Their argument got pretty heated, and in the end, he decided to kick Wesley out of their robbery crew. What they didn't realize was that the FBI had already tracked them down and just needed evidence to make an arrest. Their carelessness in not getting rid of a tracking device they had used to steal and burn a car led the FBI right to them. In the evening, Russell met up with Rader's friend, who worked at the bank. They planned their next heist, and the bank employee agreed to help Russell, but he wanted a 10% cut of the stolen money as a commission. Shortly after, Russell got a blueprint of the bank and studied the building's layout to make things easier for his crew when they entered and left, ensuring everything went smoothly and safely. A few days before the robbery, Russell went to see his daughter at work, but she wasn't there. He got worried that something might have happened to her. His worries turned out to be true when he found his daughter in the hospital looking really upset. It turned out that her boyfriend had attacked her because he didn't want to take responsibility for getting her pregnant when she was 2 months along. Russell heard about this and decided to take her somewhere away from all the money and survival worries. At that time, she agreed to go with him, and she even told her dad where the boyfriend lived because she knew her dad wanted to teach the guy a lesson. But Russell didn't want to go alone, so he brought his younger brother along to confront his daughter's boyfriend. When they got there, they gave him a good beating. With some help from Wesley, they realized that he was more level-headed than they thought. Because of that, Russell decided to let Wesley join in on the robbery operation. After finished his business, Russell met with his daughter to talk about their getaway plan. He asked her to pack her things and be ready in 2 days at the restaurant where she worked. Meanwhile, the FBI began taking action based on their suspicions. They arrested Wesley, who seemed like the weakest link, especially after they found out he had a Mustang car worth more than $7,000. It didn't make sense for someone with a low-paying workshop job to afford that. During the investigation, Wesley managed to avoid answering most questions until he started looking really pale when they asked about his older brother. The next day, Wesley informed his brother about his arrest, and Marcos found out about it. Then he asked Russell to call off their operation, but it was clear from Russell's expression that he had no intention of canceling it. On the same day, the FBI showed up at Russell's workplace, trying to unsettle him by revealing the truth and mentioning that their house was being searched by the police. Strangely, Russell remained completely unfazed, appearing calm and almost indifferent, as if he had expected the FBI's visit. To finalize their robbery plan, Russell and his team arranged to meet at a secret location, taking precautions to avoid the watchful eyes of the FBI, who were monitoring their movements. After their discussion, they all headed back home to get some rest because the next day was a crucial one for them. At that time, Russell's smooth and calculated actions even frustrated the FBI. It was hard to believe that 3 regular guys could outsmart one of the most respected investigative agencies in the United States. Then, before starting their job, Russell paid a visit to his father to bid farewell, and his dad couldn't hide the sadness knowing that his children and granddaughter would soon be leaving. Afterward, Russell went to see his notary to settle the remaining property payment, asking the notary to change the ownership to his daughter's name. Just before the robbery began, Rader had an unexpected guest, and it was an older brother seeking revenge for the death of his beloved younger sibling. There, Rader accused Wesley, leading to a confrontation that ended killing Rader. At the same time, Russell contacted his daughter, telling her to pack up and wait for him at the restaurant later that night. However, when everyone was ready to go, Wesley didn't show up, so he was replaced by another one of Rader's crew members who wanted to help make the operation go smoothly. Then there were some police officers stationed at the wrong place, and thanks for that, Russell and his team could carry out their plan without any police interference. But surprisingly, Russell handed over a file to a bank clerk to give to the FBI, raising suspicions among Rader's men and leading to a shootout. Then Marcos, before he died, told Russell not to let his family in on his business, and after that he passed away. Meanwhile, after getting rid of the evidence, Russell met with Rader and killed him after finding out about his betrayal. Just a few minutes after this, it turned out that the FBI had tricked Russell by spreading false rumors about another bank robbery he was planning, which made the FBI, who were already on his trail, tighten security at that bank. Soon after that, Russell was on the way to pick up his daughter. But before he did that, he took a break to shop and fill up his gas tank. And at that time, he didn't notice that his daughter's boyfriend, who was about to close up, was also there, holding a gun. In the end, we don't know exactly what happened to Russell. What we do know is that his daughter is now living happily with her baby. And the film ends. The moral lesson from this film is always double check if your daughter's boyfriend is lurking at the gas station with a grudge before filling up your tank, because he might do revenge on you.